Hi, everyone. There's been so much going on in the world of transfers for the top teams. And on today's episode, we want to look at two teams in particular, while we also give a general overview of how the Premier League has been spending compared to the other top leagues in the world and why the Premier League seems to be dominating in financial terms. But first, we would want to look at Manchester United. They've had some incomings, they've had some outgoings. If you listen to our previous episode, you would know that Marcus Rashford has left, confirmed a season-long loan deal to Barcelona. Barca is covering all his wages. But also there are four more players who Manchester United publicly came out and said these players should find a new club. You have the likes of Garnacho, you have Anthony, you have, I don't know who else is on this list. There are, I think, about two more players who are on this list. We move on from there. Yeah, Jadon Sancho and Malacia. Malacia has been so missing that these days it's difficult to remember his name. But yeah, the freedom fighter Jadon Sancho is also on the list. And then we would move on to Chelsea to talk about the pursuit of Xabi Simons, the place of Nico Jackson. I think we had the discussion a bit when we discussed the Club World Cup itself, but things have changed, and I'm sure Erasmus probably has slightly evolving views on exactly the place of Nicolas Jackson in the Chelsea squad. Then from there, we would see exactly who is spending the billions, because there's been a claim that clubs don't know when to stop spending, especially when they come from the Premier League. And so we would look at exactly who has been the cheerleader in the spending spree this season and where exactly they fall. And given that, what should we expect from them in the coming season? So as always, joining me on this episode is Erasmus. Erasmus, transfer seasons, you are hearing so many rumors. Which deals are interesting you the most so far?
No, I think it's really an exciting time. I remember that I used to start with a greeting and now I've stopped. Isn't it funny?
You used to start with a greeting that made me look disrespectful. Let's clarify that. Now everybody knows that I'm not disrespectful.
We've had new subscribers. Maybe I should let them know again. No, but I think I saw a meme, right? And it had like a woman jumping from a keke. And those of you who don't know, keke is like pragia. Those of you who don't know and probably are in the Western
tricycle
world also, these are tricycles, and she was jumping from a tricycle into a Benz, like over a puddle of water, and someone wrote Grace, and then they labeled the tricycle Manchester United, and then they labeled the Benz
Barcelona.
Yes, so from grass to grace.
Hey.
From grass to grace. Yeah, because I think so. It's quite funny that we sort of like start with Manchester United and then we talk about their exits, because it almost looks like it's an escape. The players over there are playing escape room with the club, and trying to find a way outside of the club, no matter what. So when I heard the comments by Amorim, where he says that, oh well, if clubs don't pay the right price, we are happy to keep them, I was like, really? Really?
Obviously, we know it's media politics.
Yeah. So it's quite funny that, and it's also quite entertaining to see that clubs still try to engage in some of these things, because you as a coach, and especially if you think about a coach who just trains the players, you get the players you want, those who are available to train them. Sort of like the manager wading into trying to beef up the prices is crazy for me, because like when you look at the example of Christopher Nkunku, who we have a clear desire to sell, we sort of during the Club World Cup played him and he was scoring winning goals. So now the price has changed from 30, 40 and I'm hearing 60 and so on. But Garnacho is not playing, Sancho is not playing, Anthony is not playing, Malacia is not playing. So I'm really, really wondering where the confidence is coming from in terms of the outgoings, which obviously does affect a lot of their capacity to recruit.
But let's try and be fair to them, right? Some of these players have improved or shown to be better than they were at United, and sort of are evidence of the theory that United is probably the problem, whether be it the system, the change in managers, the chaos without knowing exactly what training facilities they are using, the absence of upgrade within the institution of Manchester United itself, and the changing rooms and facilities and technology that are being deployed. Because the likes of Anthony went to Betis, and no matter what we want to say, Anthony did much better at Betis and than he ever did at United. He scored goals way more than he's done in as many games as he's played in United. You look at the likes of Sancho. Sancho came to Chelsea, and even though Chelsea couldn't reach a deal, there was some clear desire from Chelsea to want to retain him. And that's also because he's a player who's shown that given the right circumstances or under a favorable environment where he seems to be himself and happy, he can be a functional member of a team. If you look at Alejandro Garnacho, this is a guy who a season ago at the end of the season would be touting as one of the rising stars who will be competing with the likes of Lamine Yamal if he could really, really do well. Obviously, it quickly became apparent that his talent is bloated and overrated within the media, but also he's fallen out. But the more crucial part is his age profile and the fact that he can't be molded into a player who's able to be very, very effective. He has very desirable traits, like very, very offensive, very attacking minded, and always wanting to put pressure and create something out of nothing. These are players who I think from United's point of view now, they are probably not, even though the club is terrible, the players are probably not reflective of the club's own footballing status. Maybe the players are a little bit better. And so demanding slightly higher than expected fees for them isn't probably the worst possible thing.
No, but you also have to put a lot of, and sorry about the washer at the back, but you have to put a lot of context around some of these performances, right? Like at Betis, where he was playing in La Liga, Betis is a very, very like fluid side who have like a well-designed system and all of that stuff. So the question is it easier to come against fullbacks in the La Liga compared to the English Premier League? I think the jury is still out on that. Like you look at Sancho and you look at the way in which Maresca used him, where he played him quite close to the goalpost and within the pockets and allowed him to like float and drift and all of that. Even then, his performances, you still need to put it into context. Was he like 100% all the time? Probably no. Sometimes he was very, very frustrating. So you need
But
to
isn't
put all
that
into
every
context.
player, Erasmus?
So that's why I make my second point. But even if all of this stands true, I think what it only proves probably is that the Manchester United environment is just not suitable for these players. It just proves that, and in proving that, I think the impact that it has on the valuation of the players is that it will not work at United. So the feeling is that these can go anywhere and they will be world beaters. So I'm usually the analogy guy, right? But I'm struggling a bit here to give you a proper analogy. But it feels a bit more like going into the market and yes, probably.
So is this more like the valuation of these players is not based on whether or not they are good players, is whether or not the owner wants to keep it. So you have, let's say, a pair of fruits, which is very delicious, but the owner knows that no matter what, he's allergic to the fruits and cannot eat it. So he's negotiating from a very weak point of view that the buyer
probably has
doesn't care. Yeah, the buyer doesn't care whether or not the fruit is delicious. It's the fact that no matter what, you probably have to throw it away. So you have to sell it for something. Like at this point, anything goes, right?
Yeah. And it's also the case that the buyer also knows that if I take this out of here, it's going to be as good as anything. It's like having a Ferrari and you are in Ghana, right? And like you have to drive on some of the roads that I don't want to use Ghana more broadly. Like maybe you live in, I don't know, some parts of Ashaiman or Tema, Nogokpo. and you know that the roads are bad. If you take the Ferrari
Yeah,
there, the Ferrari is going to be destroyed. So you can't drive it. There's no road for
yeah,
you to rev it. So your friend who is going to Germany knows that if he takes it to Germany, this car is going to perform. But he also knows that you cannot use it. So he tells you, hey, like,
yeah,
look, you cannot use this thing. And I think the more the narrative is fed that these players go outside and then they go and perform, it's sort of like flipping this back on United, where it has always the narrative has always been that these players are not giving their best and they are the reason for why the club is in its state. I think
yeah,
more and more that they are these loan departures are putting a crack within that argument, and people are not that people didn't know, but it came from the coach is bad to the players,
yeah,
and Glazers left, and now it's like okay, like the real rot is with the club, and that doesn't help them.
yeah. I mean, this is a very interesting, very, very interesting take on how departures that end up doing well consistently could end up biting back on the club, right? Because everybody's expecting that these should be like things that improve or increase the value of the players. But from the perspective that you just put on it, it's actually creating the impression that no matter what, it's United that they will not work at. It's your burden to get rid of them. If you don't, you pay their wages and you still can't use them. So now you are the one who would be struggling to accept any low ball offer, and you sort of have to deal with it, right? Which is a very interesting
Exactly,
look on it.
exactly. And the solution definitely isn't keeping them in the squad. Like Amorim
Yeah,
knows this. And like every United fan who will be honest with themselves in this moment knows this. You can't keep Garnacho in that dressing room, which means that you
yeah,
need to get them training in the under 21 reserves. And you can't just say we'll keep them in under 21 reserves, but still pretend like we
yeah,
need them and therefore we should go. Like, and I know maybe another argument that a Manchester United fan will bring is that these players need to play, right? So there is a World Cup coming, and Amorim himself mentioned it. He said there's a World Cup coming. These players will need to play. So it's
yeah,
either they get ready to join my squad or they find a club. the
yeah,
the problem is, like I've said, players can try and stay compliant, but
yeah,
what vibes is it bring into the dressing room, given the new players that you've also brought in the mix? And you can't have them there and not want to compete, you see.
yeah,
And if you are going to have them there, they won't play under you because you've bought someone to replace them, then those feelings are going to come back again. And I think what dislodges that argument is that the players don't determine their own value and they don't determine their
yeah,
next moves. They are all
yeah,
discounts in this game. So no influences on the clubs who don't care if a player will play the World Cup or not. They care about
yeah,
saving 5 million or 10 million on a
yeah,
transfer. Like Anthony sold bought for 80 million, now being paraded for 25 million, and no one wants to even pay.
yeah. I mean, Anthony's valuation, I think, was slightly increased after his Betis loan to what, 40 million or something. But the question I want to ask
No one will give.
really, I mean, it's up for the world to see. The question I want to ask really is, is, is this stance by Amorim slightly shocking, right? Because you see the notion that he's a coach who has been strict on principles, and he's not seen to be playing the media game. Even when he's doing it objectively. But this seems like a shock, like reaction from him, a shock response, because we know that the likes of Maresca would say, yeah, he's still our player, but it doesn't mean I have to use him. He's not the profile I want. He's a good player, but sure, he just doesn't fit into my plans. And he would move on from that. Maresca won't go the step further of telling you, yeah, we'll bring you back if you nobody buys you or something of that sort. Like that extent of signaling that there's a world in which players who have been ostracized, especially in the case of Garnacho, specifically because they disrespected the squad and the manager, is going to be reintegrated into the squad and played when they don't make a move. Is that more like him lying to the world and lying to himself? and not accepting the reality that, look, no matter what, you are not getting these players back into your squad.
Yeah, I think for me, okay, when you gave that example, I thought of Trevor Chalobah, who probably
Yeah,
went on loan, said, not part of the squad. Need came and said, but he's also a player, we need him. So it's not like we can't do these walkbacks, even when it's not like it's not strange. It has happened with a lot of players
yeah,
where the walkbacks happen. But I think the key thing you point out is that Amorim himself is a very well principled coach. And
yeah,
in he's one of those guys that he's got the results when he's had his way. So he's always keen
yeah,
on having his way. And this situation looks because, especially because it looks out of character, it is beginning
yeah,
to show a sign of someone who doesn't have his entire way. And
yeah,
whether that has an impact on the results which we expect from him is still yet to be seen. Can he compromise and
yeah,
still get the results? Because from what we've known him in his career, he doesn't compromise, right?
yeah.
And I feel like position was only a compromise because of the business situation. And maybe this
Okay.
is the time to start talking about the signings that he's looking to make, right?
Yeah,
He has got Cunha, he's got Mbuemo, but Hoyland is not an option that you take into the season. And I know
yeah,
Mbuemo and Cunha can sort of provide the goal. So maybe there's an argument to be made that, like, if you keep these players, you have a Sancho who can drop in and you play Cunha more up front, or a Garnacho can drop in the same space, or a
yeah,
Fernandez can drop in there, Cunha is up top. But it does look like from the system he plays, he needs a center forward. And if he's to get
yeah,
any decent center forward who will be an upgrade on Hoyland, they need to pay for it. And to pay for it, they need the money. So
yeah,
this looks like it's a business move influenced by the club, of which he's a part of, and he obviously has an interest to
yeah,
say so, right? And if you look at the market right now, we spoke about some of these options, right? They are looking for free agent options like the Vardy, the Moiskins, but they know that these are only
The-
stopgaps. So they need to get re- real, real players, and then the
people
real
said
players who are being touted.
people are getting Yokresh. People are getting Ekitike. People are scouting Sesko. People are being offered Isak. And United is being offered Vardy.
I mean, he's a Premier League legend, but I don't know if he still has the legs. So if you look at
Yeah,
the realistic options which they have pursued, like Crystal Palace Mateta, which you can probably get for 45 million, but Crystal Palace are not letting him and Eze go in the same season. Ollie
yeah,
Watkins, they've already gone there, 29 or 28. Aston Villa said no. Nicholas Jackson, who probably looks like the only one you can tempt, Chelsea's already valuing him, especially after that Ekitike deal, at 80 million. And like,
yeah,
I'm sorry, but I'm sure like Chelsea is happy with United paying in bits and all of that. But from what we've seen, United cannot really move big money
yeah,
again unless they sell that player. So they need to have money in
yeah,
the bank to be able to assure anyone that they'll even be paying in installments over time. And when we look at these options,
yeah.
none of them is coming cheap.
I mean, for anyone who is listening or watching, the way in which some of these transfer deals work, especially, is that when you sell a player, the value instantly reflects on the entire value instantly reflects on your account books, even if the other team is going to take 3 or 4 years to pay, right? So if you sell Garnacho for 60 million, all that 60 million reflects on your books instantly this year. And that means it's assumed that you have 60 million to spend, for instance. But if they go out then buy, let's say, Jackson for 80 million and it's spread over 4 years, the way in which that reflects on their books is 20 million per year, right? So now they sell Garnacho for 60 million, get 60 million on their books. They buy Jackson for 80 million and get 20 million on their books for this year. And that's why a lot of the time outgoings for a club is super, super important to balance out the financial books and make sure that they do not breach the financial rules. But I wanted to ask a much more general question here. you were pointing out to something that this is a coach or a manager who has been known to thrive by getting his way. He's been known to establish that same principles. And we saw a manager come in not long ago who was touted as the same thing, but crumbled under situations where he was forced to walk back his words. So the likes of, and I'm referring to Eric Ten Hag, who came in with the same disciplinarian route, and he several times had to walk back on Marcus Rashford, on even the likes of Sancho not training well and all that, sent him away, try and play it nice, brings him back after leaving him out, and then decides to freeze him out after that media exchange battle. And in the end, the manager is the one who loses the dressing room because there's the notion that he's not, first of all, he doesn't seem to have the full backing of the club to go to whatever extent he wants. And secondly, he doesn't have the steel to be strict to the end. So he chooses when and where and whom to apply these steels to. Is Amorim not facing that same risk of signaling that he probably wants these players to leave, but because of club situation, whether or not he likes it, he has to walk back his words on the fact that he's freezing out these players permanently? And what signal does that send, right, to the dressing room? Because we've known United to be a team where players always like to test the character of managers, where the dressing room occasionally want to see whether or not the management and the higher ups are actually behind you. And they tested it with Eric Ten Hag and he completely capitulated. So I'm wondering whether or not this is a risky game Amorim is playing, that it might end up signaling something of some weakness on his part and the amount of power and authority he wields within United.
Yeah, I mean, like, when you want to make such decisions, or like especially when it comes, because like there's a saying that you don't point a gun
Yeah.
at like don't point a gun when you are not going to shoot it. If by
Yeah.
the time you point it, you should have made up your mind that you're going to shoot it. And like it's had in so many forms, right? You don't threaten
Yeah.
someone unless like you
You're
are
going to
holding
follow
them.
through.
So you should be, yes, you should be. And I'm not saying that the fact that you said it means you follow through with it. You need to be able to show that you can follow through with it. And you should have made
Yeah.
that decision in your head that if it comes to it, I'm going to follow through with it. That's where the judgment is lacking a bit for me, because
Yeah.
we are well aware of these principles and we are well aware of the disciplinary issues, but the club is not in that position where they can make such gargantuan decisions. So it was important to balance that risk, especially in the approach to players. And for me, I know that, and I spoke to you about this, why Amorim is likely going to face like some other form of mutiny. And I know it's a very, very likable character, but United almost seems to get into the cycle of having managers who can enforce some kind of discipline. And in my opinion, there is a misprofiling of the situation as one of indiscipline, and therefore requiring the approach to be instilling more discipline, which is in the end creating more like surfacing the problem of indiscipline, because the subject matter themselves who are there don't understand why the blame is being put on them in all of these instances. But lest I detract from what I'm trying to say, I think that in the end, if Amorim finds himself in a position where he needs to constantly walk back on his words, it can have an effect on the squad. And the only way you prevent that is by knowing the full extent of the situation and then being able to make a decision and commit to it. And like I said, this looks very unnatural for him. And the more you look at it, the more he's being forced to make those kind of decisions and having to deal with the repercussions. It's either he says, well, that's enough, I don't want to do this anymore, or it leads to some of those consequences which you are talking about. But I think what stands out for him is that he's a very, very likable character. It's someone that understands players quite well. So you can also see that he's able to motivate his players quite well. And there seemed to be sort of like a good intention on United to bring it to the top. So we wait to see how that goes.
Yeah, I had a follow up on this, pivoting away from what this is likely to do to him and the players and all that. I wanted to check: are we seeing a change in strategy? Some people purport it as a return to the Ferguson ways of signing and recruitment, where they are targeting Premier League proven players, players who they sort of seek to make instant impact on. We know some of the greats like Cantona and Deco, Van Persie, these players, even Roy Keane, these players were players, I think Rio Ferdinand as well. Were all players who came from Premier League sides. They were good players, and United used to be known to go around Premier League clubs and just fish for players and come and arrange them in their team. And because these players had proven that they work in the Premier League, it was much easier to get a return on them, and it proved much more successful. In recent years, post Ferguson, what we saw was a lot more going outside of the Premier League to fish for talent, which most clubs are doing, by the way, but they seem to be failing woefully at it. They seem not to be identifying the talent properly. They seem to be overpricing these talent and not getting any meaningful return on them. And they seem to be making huge and unimaginable economic losses on these signings. Is the return to signing Premier League proven players the start of the United path to rebuilding properly and getting much more sustainable results?
Yeah, I mean, it's United's transfer record is well documented, right? Like we all know it's been piss poor just because it's not worked. And obviously, this I don't think this strategy is as ingenious as maybe we may want to put it now. If you think about it, Manchester United was one of the most, under Sir Alex Ferguson, was one of the most successful clubs in the entire world. And that in itself came with a lot of economic might, which meant that they could pursue that strategy, because that's one thing about that strategy. You are buying a Cunha for 62, buying an Mbuemo for like 72, and that's sort of like the price tag that you are shopping in. And obviously the reason they pursue talent in other markets is either like they have a superior advantage that they know they cannot find locally, or they are betting on the price. I would say that I don't even think that when they targeted most of those foreign players, it was based on the price, because they still ended up overpaying for most of these players. But I would say in general, the trajectory, and maybe this might also come up when we start talking about the money involved, the trajectory of clubs in the EPL in general now is to go for players who have already played in the English Premier League or share similar attributes to players in there. Because more and more, the Premier League is becoming very physical, it's becoming very, very, very technical, and becoming very, very fast paced. So players who are coming from abroad are beginning to fill the gap in there. You can see from Erasmus Hoyland, like how he came in there, and like a couple of other players who are just struggling to adapt. So the lower league sides gives you the room and environment. We've seen with Chelsea buying from Brighton like all of the time, like an Arsenal in 10 buying from Chelsea. And that cycle is not going to stop soon. But perhaps, I think for them also, the reason why they are having to do that, which, like I said, represents a safe strategy but heavy investment. And if you are going to pursue that kind of strategy, like I said, you need a pocket. The only problem is that they don't have the pockets. I think the reason why they are pursuing that regardless is because they understand that the club needs to succeed now. The club needs to succeed now, like now. And like the burden and the debt that's on them, the more this keeps going on, the less likely it is that they will get out of it. So if you are going to throw, I think this is them throwing everything into the fight right now. If this doesn't work, I shudder at what most likely would be happening. But I think that is the reason why they are pursuing the strategies, not in the sense of the Alex Ferguson thing, because they don't have the deep pockets, but you want something that works immediately, quickly. And I think that's what they are going for.
Okay. Now that we've touched on Manchester United, they are still in the market for a centre forward. We know that Nicholas Jackson is a centre forward that has been linked to them. They've been linked to Oli Watkins. They've been linked in some parts to Benjamin Sesko. Gyökeres was toyed with in front of them just to make Arsenal be more serious about their deal, but Arsenal has closed the deal now. Isak is on the market. Who do you think Manchester United should be targeting? I just want to say this. Me, if you say they should target Jackson, I'll just say that it's because he's from Chelsea and you know Chelsea, you get money. But on a more serious note, who do you think that United should be looking out for? And who do you think that actually, if they had the money, they should pursue? Right? Because regardless of any of these options, it's going to be dependent on whether or not United have the money. And if they have some outgoings, they lock some outgoings in and they have the money, which striker do you think that if they're able to do a deal for would be a good fit for the team and bring them the instant success that they are looking for?
I mean, like all the strikers that you've mentioned, there's a reason why you mentioned them in the first place, right? Because they are interested in looking at them, and all of them bring something unique to the table. And I think that any one out of those options does the job, especially so because of the players they signed in Cunha and in Mbuemo. These were top five like goal contributors in the league, and you having that outlet is good. I think it puts them in a comfortable position with regards to the centre forward position. Why? Because you can have like a ZC who can now form an attacking trio with these two guys and make them play in a way that facilitates these guys to score. Or you can tap into the creative power of Cunha and Mbuemo and then have someone who comes in who is a finisher. So I think that there's a diversity in there. Like ideally, you would say they go for a Sesko because he's younger, like he can develop, he can grow, he's more physical, so more likely to be attuned to the Premier League. And he's like a prospect that can stay on for many years. But obviously, balancing the financial situation, it almost looks improbable. So I think another player like Jackson is also maybe same in that mode where it's like it's maybe and it's an improvement on Højlund, right? In the sense that he will make the play, he would try to battle defenders and all of that, which is quite good. He provides some of the assist, but it still doesn't give you the finish. So you still have to rely heavily on Cunha and Mbuemo to be finishing a lot. But like Jackson in that team would really bang. But I think that the more pragmatic option will be a Watkins and a Mateta, who are like Premier League proven. We know they can give you 15 to 20 goals in a season, and they are just there to finish the ball. But more so for Watkins also, he can be very much involved in the play, but you know that he will always be hunting for the goal. But I think that like the fact that they are looking at Jackson, I know like people don't rate him, but tells you that he's a very, very good player.
No, I think Jackson is a good player. I probably look much more favorably on Jackson than Mikel Obi does, obviously. But I think that the thing is, United have another young, scrappy, not well-proven striker who they don't have him on even the list of players they are moving on. And nobody is lining up for him in Rasmus Højlund, right? So for me now, I think that they risk a lot more, especially with a club who is very, very thin on their finances and have to go for sure bets. They risk a lot more with Jackson than with Watkins. And I think for me, if they can make a deal for Watkins, they should. The best striker in the Premier League, the hottest striker that you'd be going for right now would be, let's say, Alexander Isak, but you don't have 150 million to go and spend. So, and for me, Watkins provides something that is very, very crucial, especially if you are playing the likes of Mbuemo and Cunha, who likes to go in behind, go closer to the box. Watkins being able to drop deep and link up the play, being able to be much more clinical in assisting the play is a much more helpful signing. I get that Jackson can do that, but like I'm saying, probably Jackson is much more closer to Højlund than Watkins is to Højlund in terms of experience, in terms of being clinical, in terms of productivity, right? So you would prefer somebody who gives you a substantial leap in upgrade than what do you call it? Jackson provides. But I also think that the price, right? Jackson is definitely going to be priced higher than Watkins if eventually a deal is to be made. Because Watkins' age doesn't favor him. The ceiling of his growth doesn't favor him as well. And the fact that even Aston Villa themselves, I think because they don't have Champions League football, would also be happy if they can downsize their financial burdens a little bit and maybe go in for some strikers. The thing that I don't get is why they let John Duran go instead of Oli Watkins earlier on, but we spoke about it. And now the funny thing is Duran is out of favor in Saudi League and he's going somewhere for some loan deal or whatever it is. The guy just went there to take the money, like we said, and he'll be back soon in Europe because the Saudi people don't want him anymore. But I think, like you said, Watkins would probably be the ideal deal. But anyway, United is United. Maybe they'll sign Jamie Vardy or Mateta or Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Who knows? But let's wait and see how the transfer deals actually go. Talking of Jackson, let's talk about Chelsea. Chelsea, knowing very well that they like Jackson, they would want to keep Jackson, went out of their way to sign 2 forward players who are literal replacements of Nico Jackson. I mean, we talk about Joao Pedro as being played off the left or inside forward, but he's too clinical from what we've seen to not be getting playing time compared to Jackson. Because if you ask any Chelsea fans' biggest problem with Jackson, it's not his work rate, it's not his work rate, it's not how aggressive or committed he is and the zeal behind his plays. A lot of it is down to finishing and how wasteful Jackson can be in front of the box. What we've seen with Joao Pedro in just 2 games that he's played, don't give him balls in front of the box because he won't forgive you. Don't create chances for him and think that he's Højlund or Jackson and so you get away with it. He will punish you. Liam Delap is also known to be, I think, he's very, very dominant. He possesses certain attributes that Jackson doesn't come with, but I think he's much more precise as well in terms of the way in which he's playing the ball. And it seems like more and more Jackson is slipping down the trend, especially with him being a little bit reckless with disciplinary issues. So the last time we spoke about him, you said Chelsea still likes Jackson. There's still a place for him in this team. I think more and more he still falls out of favor and probably doesn't get a lot of playing time. And with Jackson and his age, he would still want a lot of playing time. So where do you see Jackson in this team? And put it in context in terms of bringing in Javi Simons and adding more numbers to the attacking players. I get the fact that they are not playing the exact same position, but obviously having more options in front mean that those areas of the pitch in terms of competition is also crowded. So Joao Pedro would obviously not be playing in 10 if Javi Simons is here. So he's definitely pushing up 9, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this Jackson situation, I know it looks strange, but it's not too strange. Like, if you followed Chelsea last season, what would you say they needed to sign? You say they needed to sign a striker.
Yeah.
They needed to sign a striker. And one was signed in Liam Delap. But we've seen Joao Pedro come in, obviously, with the thinking that he has the profile to sort of play off the striker and be an option for like all of the attacking areas. But obviously, Maresca likes dynamic forwards. And it does look like in 2-3 games where we tried him in the striker position, he is killing it. So
yeah,
I don't think it's a case of looking at Jackson and saying, rubbish, we don't want you here anymore. It was a case of let's bring in help to support Nicholas Jackson. Let's bring in competition. And if you look at the kind of strikers that Maresca has still gone for, these are strikers who fit the same mold as Jackson. They, maybe apart from Delap, who is more of a battering ram, is more physical and likes to go into the box, take his shots cleanly. But Joao Pedro is also the kind that drops in, comes into the midfield to take his dribbles, do the link ups, trying to run in behind the defense. So you could see that he went for the same Jackson profile, but maybe now better finishing in Joao Pedro, and the experiment looks to be working. And then if Joao Pedro is looking to be more effective in the striker position, then it begs the question of what becomes of the left wing, where we were complaining that we had no cover. And the only person who could play there was Madueke. Now Madueke is
Yeah.
gone. And even though Gittins has come in, uh, Gittins, as much as he's a good player, is coming from a Dortmund team where he just had like I think 15 goals and assists in total over the course of the season. I don't think it's up to that. So he's not opening the tap, giving you those kind of numbers. And if Joao Pedro is going forward, then it means that we need someone to fill in on the in terms of from that left wing option, but also more of an inside forward, which was what we thought Joao Pedro was coming to do. So I do agree that he's been pushed to the fringes because he's now looking like a third choice striker and he wouldn't want to be that. But it is important to remember that even as of last season, with Conference League and Premier League only, and we're out of the FA Cup so early, you could say that we could do with another striker. And say for the period that Jackson was out, imagine there was just one striker. You could still say we needed another more. Now that we are playing the Champions League, the golf in quality is way higher. It's not like the Conference League where we can rotate. So if we do not have quality options, we will struggle, especially when it comes to injuries and dealing with suspensions. So I think that Jackson will get his chance. I don't think he'll get to play as much as he would want to. I don't think he'll play the big games like he wants to. But I think that you are going to see a lot of games where, like, we just don't play Joao Pedro and then we play Jackson. And a lot of games where Joao Pedro plays, we take him off at 60, 65. The lap comes in, that's a good job. And even a lot of games where we even play Joao Pedro and a Jackson or Joao Pedro and a Delap. I think that there are going to be opportunities. I also just wanted to add that Chelsea's also going in for a
Yeah.
left back option. It looks like that's the last signing to close the window in Joao Hato, who has been one of the biggest Dutch prospects. So that's a double Dutch if eventually we go for it.
Interesting. What is the role of what do you call it? Javi Simons in this team? Because you're thinking, isn't the attacking midfield the place where Cole Palmer thrives the most? Isn't the attacking midfield the place where you want to give Cole Palmer that nod, give him the creative freedom, get him closer to the box? Even if you play him wide, you are usually setting up the team such that you have he has more freedom to drift in, so he gets much closer to the edge of the box.
Yeah.
What's the
I
thinking
don't
behind
mean to,
bringing in Javi Simons?
because Cole Palmer can play 63 games. And if you think about him of the 10 position, we don't have any other player like him. Like, yes, Joao Pedro can drop in there to play, but he's quite
But you
more
have
effective going
Nkunku.
forward. So Nkunku is leaving the club.
So why are you selling? That's
Nkunku
my
is leaving
question.
the
Like, why
club.
are you selling Nkunku for Javi Simons?
Because he's been there for like 2 years and it's quite clear that it's not working in terms of him replacing Palmer in that position. He's played with Palmer all season. Have you seen Palmer being rested for him in any game? So it tells you
No.
that Maresca doesn't see him as someone who can play in that position. Maresca sees him in, I don't know, on the wings or something like that, or as a striker. But somehow, like, he's not that. He's not that. And he gives us something different, I won't lie. It's only that we don't often need that different thing. He's someone who likes to slow down the game, uh, but likes to be in the box, like scrappy do the link ups over there and all of that stuff. But with the Premier League, it's quite physical, fast moving, and sometimes he just looks out of place. So Javi Simons would definitely help to take some of the load off Palmer.
Interesting. That being said, let's look at the Premier League itself, because there's been several notions around the fact that Chelsea, since you guys got new billion-dollar owners, you spend without remorse. You guys are the ones breaking the game. You and Man City, you are breaking the game. The likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, they are the conservative guys. They don't really spend that much. But there are a few numbers I want us to look at. As of yesterday, the spendings of each club in the Premier League, those who have been spending within the Premier League. And let's look at a few standout figures and names as well. But it would shock you that leading the line is Liverpool, spending 269 million pounds. But a lot of people would excuse that by saying, well, Slot didn't do any business last season, so let's excuse him. Let's take this as his signings from last season to this season combined. Is that a fair excuse for how much they are spending this summer?
I mean, like, if you have the money, you spend it how you want, right? But like, I was trying to look at the numbers, and 269 million pounds is a lot of money, with the potential to go and sign Isak, who is going for like 150 million. This is outrageous. That's taking it in the region of like half a million pounds.
Yeah.
In one window. So even if you split it within two windows, that's still a lot. That's still a lot. Even if this gets to 300, 150 in two windows,
but let's stick to the number without Isak.
No, but even for 269, you consider the fact that people talk about Liverpool being conservative. I think that's the myth that I want them to dispel, because even right before Slot took over, you had players like Gravenberg, Szoboszlai, and these guys, you see, when they buy players in that 60, 56, 70 region, no one likes to talk about it. Once it crosses 80, then you start hearing the noise. And these players were bought for those amounts. Like even the Gravenberg, he was bought for 2-3 seasons before he kicked off. Gakpo signed for, I think, 45 or 50, 2-3 seasons before he kicked off. So they have spent money, and they do spend money now. And if you look at the charts, I'm sure you show the charts, the top four, the amount that they are spending is twice that of the others. So over the last couple of years, we've had competition from teams like Aston Villa, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Brighton. And it looks like this season, the top four is consolidating again. Why? Because these guys finished in the Champions League, and the Champions League is giving much more money now. I think it's 100 million just in participation. And this is helping to widen the gap. So clubs like Aston Villa, who go there once in a while, need to always make the investments in order to compete over there. And when they don't make it again, this is all investments they need to take away, because they have a huge wage bill, huge expensive budget, which obviously they're not getting money for. What does it force them to do? To be conservative moving forward. And that's the same situation that you're having within the Premier League, especially with relegation teams, because Premier League teams by default receive huge amounts of money. Like a Premier League team alone, even in the relegation zone, probably earns more than the entire championship. So there are concerns that the top four is being consolidated again by the money. And even within the EPL, even across leagues, you realize that the English teams are becoming far more stronger within the transfer markets. Like when Dominic Solanke was sold to Tottenham, Bournemouth just bought a replacement for, I think, 6. Like, when would you hear Bournemouth spending 60 million for a starting centre forward in the Portuguese league, or for a Champions League team? And they just took them. As Everton fights with clubs like other clubs in big leagues. Like, I don't want to give any examples, but Everton is battling now with top clubs in Europe in order to sign certain players. Like Sunderland, they just came in, and you can see that the profile of players that they are signing,
they spent
these are
207
like
million. Sunderland has spent
Yeah,
107 million pounds on signings.
yeah. And you ask the question whether United is going back to the strategy of Sir Alex Ferguson, where they were sort of buying within the league. You can't shop
Yeah.
from the Premier League. This is Waitrose.
Yeah.
It's Waitrose now. It's an expensive shop. I
Yeah.
don't know which expensive shop do you have in China, in Hong Kong. Sorry, in the UK.
Yeah.
In the UK,
Why are you
it is
laughing? Go
Waitrose,
ahead.
right?
Yeah.
In the UK, it is Waitrose. So that everything on the shelf is expensive because the clubs have money, so they don't need to sell. And that's how come over the years they've been able to keep their best players. Like we saw Semenyo being touted, they
Yeah.
locked him down, new contract. Uh, Morgan Gibbs White, when they tried to, so unless the player wants to leave, we saw with Cunha, he wanted to leave. Mbuemo, he wanted to leave. Elanga, he wanted to leave. Madueke, he wanted to leave. If he doesn't want to leave, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
You can't shop within the league anymore because they are going to slap a huge tag on them. And that's the inflation which is being caused over here, which other clubs, how do other leagues respond? Because recognize that now the competition is not just within the English Premier League. Like now they play, and that maybe also explains why the clubs are spending in this way, because now the Champions League format allows for you to compete directly against
Yeah.
clubs, against some of the
Yeah.
biggest clubs right from the onset. So
Yeah.
in the previous times,
The
it used to be
revenue is also
strategic to
more.
finish second. Yeah, and the revenue is more. So now you are competing with the biggest clubs right from round one. So you need to stock. So how do other leagues respond? Back to the question. They need to get a share of the pot. And they're obviously not
Yeah.
going to get more TV money because APL are taking it all away. Guess how they respond? Because you also want
How?
their players, right? Because it's more expensive
Oh,
in
yeah.
I mean, you also want their players. So now you also approach, once it's an EPL team, you hear 60, 70, 80. See what Frankfurt was doing with Eketike. Because his
Yeah.
market was in the English Premier League. But if Eketike was being targeted by even Napoli or anyone
Yeah.
else, it will go for 12.5.
Was this I've forgotten a player. There was a player who Chelsea went after, I think in the previous transfer window or two transfer windows ago, where Chelsea went after 40 million or so. He came in to do some medicals and the deal eventually collapsed. He went back and then was sold for, was it 7 million or 10 million to an Italian side or something of that sort. I've forgotten. Is this player who is very, very strong and he's a center forward? And I've forgotten his name, but that was like a really interesting sign to see how the exact same player is valued differently just because you have different clubs at the table, right? So some of these things are things that you look at and then it's quite interesting. But if you look at the way in which some of these clubs are spending, for instance, Liverpool is spending 269, Chelsea is 212 in second place. You have Arsenal, who has spent 137 million pounds, excluding the deal for Gyökeres, which after that I think takes them to second place with around a total of 216. You have United, after the purchases that they've made in Diego Leon, I think with Cunha and Mbomo have spent around 133 million pounds. You have Manchester City, who have spent 127, Tottenham 122, Sunderland 107, Brighton 69.7, Burnley 69.5, and Leeds around 60 million, right? So I think some of these deals are the ones that we need to look at. And it's pointing out to exactly the difficulties within the English Premier League and exactly how funding is influencing football. So, like you said, it's really interesting to look at it. It's something that clubs need to look at. And overall, the Premier League has spent over 1 billion pounds, right? Over 1 billion pounds in transfers, and the transfer window has not even closed yet. So In fact, the influence of money and revenue on the league is very, very significant. And it's one thing that we need to look at. But yeah, this has been an interesting discussion. Thanks to everyone for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for following the Shaft podcast, especially the Beer Parlour episodes where we discuss sports and look at all the things happening in the world of sports. And today we've dissected Manchester United, Chelsea, and also looked at the overall influence of money on the Premier League, how other clubs or other leagues are responding by hiking up the prices of their players, and how this is likely going to see the impact on football. But let's see how this transfer window goes, and would obviously bring you some more in-depth analysis. So leave your thoughts, your likes, your comments, and stay in touch with us. Enjoy this episode and all other episodes that you see on your screen from us.